the high-stakes corridors of American power, few moments shine as brightly as when political titans collide. The halls of Washington, D.C. were buzzing with anticipation. The nation's attention was laser-focused on the unfolding drama around what had quickly become the most talked-about legislation of the year, President Donald Trump's Big Beautiful Bill. This sweeping piece of legislation was nothing short of transformative. It promised to extend the much-lauded tax cuts that had been a hallmark of the Trump administration, bolster border security in a way that conservatives had long demanded, and implement significant cuts to Medicaid and SNAP benefits. The bill had already passed the House of Representatives and was now headed to the Senate floor, where its fate would be decided amid fierce debate. Yet, the bill also carried a controversial price tag, an eye-popping $2.40 to $5.70 trillion addition to the national debt, depending on who was doing the math. President Trump, known for his bold, brash style, had championed the bill as a victory for hardworking Americans. But opposition had begun to mount from unexpected corners, including some within his own party. Among the most vocal critics was Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, a libertarian-leaning Republican known for his fierce independence and penchant for bucking party leadership. As the Senate prepared for what many expected to be a fiery debate, whispers of a confrontation between Rand Paul and President Trump began circulating in political circles. The stage was set for a showdown that could either unify the Republican Party or tear it apart. Rand Paul's office had been quiet in the weeks leading up to the Senate session, but behind the scenes, the senator was preparing to make a bold move. He viewed the Big Beautiful Bill not only as fiscally irresponsible but as a betrayal of conservative principles, especially the massive debt increase. For Paul, cutting government spending wasn't just a slogan, it was a crusade. The day of the Senate debate arrived. Reporters, political analysts, and even casual citizens tuned in to witness the unfolding drama. The Senate chamber was packed. Cameras captured the sharp suits, the tense expressions, the weight of the moment palpable in the air. Senator Paul took to the floor, his voice steady but resolute. "Mr. President," he began, addressing the chamber but clearly directing his words to Trump, "this big beautiful bill may look appealing on the surface, but it is a Trojan horse for increased government debt and unsustainable spending. I urge my colleagues to reconsider this reckless path." The chamber murmured. The president's supporters bristled. Many had been expecting a firm defense of the bill from Trump himself, but few anticipated that Rand Paul would confront the president so directly on the Senate floor, no less. Moments later, President Trump strode confidently into the chamber for a scheduled press briefing. The tension was thick as the two men prepared to face off, with reporters scrambling to catch every word. Trump, never one to back down, fired back. "Senator Paul," he said, voice booming, "you're missing the bigger picture. This bill delivers on promises to Americans who want jobs, security, and a prosperous future. It's big and beautiful because it works. Don't let fear of the debt stop us from doing what's right." Rand Paul's expression hardened. "With all due respect, Mr. President, kicking the debt can down the road is a danger to our children and grandchildren. True conservatism means fiscal responsibility." The verbal volley was electric. It was clear this wasn't just a policy disagreement, it was a battle for the soul of the Republican Party. But just when it seemed the confrontation might escalate, an unexpected twist occurred. One that would leave Senator Paul reconsidering his stance and the consequences of his challenge to the president. Would Rand Paul regret standing up to Trump so publicly? And what would this mean for the future of the bill, the Republican Party, and America's economic destiny? The answers were about to unfold in a dramatic, unforgettable way. The Senate chamber had barely settled after the heated exchange between Senator Rand Paul and President Trump when the real battle shifted to the quieter, more dangerous halls behind closed doors. Public confrontations are dramatic, but the true power plays happen where the cameras don't reach, in smoky rooms, private offices, and whispered phone calls. Immediately following the debate, Senate leadership convened an emergency meeting. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, a seasoned political operator, understood the stakes. The Big Beautiful Bill was a signature achievement for the Trump administration designed to cement the president's legacy and secure Republican dominance in upcoming elections. Yet, the bill's ballooning cost and the internal dissent threatened to unravel it. McConnell addressed the group, his voice low but firm. "We need to bring Senator Paul back in line, quickly. If he holds firm, we risk losing key votes and handing a gift to the Democrats. We can't let that happen." The plan was clear: pressure Rand Paul to back down. But the senator was no ordinary lawmaker. Known for his unyielding dedication to fiscal conservatism, he had built his reputation on being the maverick, the voice of restraint amid a sea of big spending. but even the fiercest maverick can face moments of doubt, especially when the weight of political consequence crashes down. Within hours, Paul was receiving calls not just from Senate leadership but from influential donors, close allies, and even some members of his own family. Each call carried the same message: support the big beautiful bill or risk isolation. One phone call stood out. It was from a trusted advisor, someone who had been by Paul's side through every political battle. Rand, the voice said cautiously, this fight isn't just about principles anymore. You're risking your ability to influence anything moving forward. The White House is watching. If you don't come around, doors will close. Rand Paul sat alone in his office, staring out at the Washington skyline. The city glittered with promise and peril. He knew the big beautiful bill was flawed, too much spending, too much debt, but he also recognized the political reality. Trump was immensely popular with the base, and many Republicans wanted to ride that wave. Yet, the question gnawed at him: was this fight worth losing everything he had worked for? Meanwhile, back at the White House, President Trump was already turning the confrontation to his advantage. The bill was his signature economic plan, designed to fulfill promises made during rallies and campaign speeches. To him, the fight wasn't just legislative, it was personal. The White House press secretary held daily briefings filled with fiery defenses of the big beautiful bill, framing it as a patriotic duty and a safeguard for American prosperity. This bill is big, it's beautiful, and it's bold, just like the American spirit, she declared. Anyone standing against it is standing against the future. Social media buzzed with supporters and critics alike. Some conservatives applauded Paul's stance, praising his courage to oppose reckless spending. Others saw him as a spoiler, undermining unity at a critical time. The pressure campaign escalated further when prominent Republican donors began threatening to pull funding from Paul's next campaign if he refused to align with the party on the bill. Political analysts began speculating that Paul's leadership positions on key committees might be in jeopardy. Amid this, Paul received an invitation to a private meeting with President Trump himself, a rare opportunity. The meeting was arranged in the Oval Office, a room heavy with history and the weight of American power. As Paul entered, Trump greeted him with a firm handshake and a sharp gaze. Rand, I respect you. You're a fighter. But this bill is our chance to keep America strong. I want to hear your concerns, but I want you on board. Paul took a breath. Mr. President, I want what's best for America too. But adding trillions to the debt risks everything. We need fiscal responsibility if we want to truly secure our country's future. Trump leaned forward. We can address that down the road. Right now, this bill delivers for Americans who need jobs, security, and opportunity. If we don't pass it, we lose momentum. The conversation was intense but respectful. Both men understood the stakes, but neither was willing to yield easily. As Paul left the Oval Office, the senator knew he was standing at a crossroads. He could continue to fight publicly and risk political isolation, or he could find a way to work within the system, shaping the bill's future and preserving his influence. The decision would come down to more than just policy, it would test his resolve, his principles, and his vision for what leadership truly meant. The day of the Senate vote on the big beautiful bill dawned bright and clear, but the tension in Washington was anything but. Capitol Hill was a cauldron of whispers, deals, and shifting alliances. Senators maneuvered behind the scenes, trying to gauge how their colleagues would vote and what concessions might be on the table. Rand Paul, after his private meeting with President Trump, found himself under intense scrutiny. Some viewed his stance as a principled stand, others, especially within GOP leadership, saw it as a potential roadblock to a critical legislative victory. Yet, Paul had also learned that raw opposition without compromise could be political suicide. The bill's supporters had spent weeks courting moderate senators and promising tweaks, small carve-outs to Medicaid, slight adjustments to border funding, all designed to woo wavering votes without diluting the bill's core. Yet the price tag loomed large, and many worried about the impact on America's fiscal future. Senator Paul arrived at the chamber early that morning, papers in hand, prepared to speak his truth but also willing to listen. He was determined to leverage his position to mitigate the bill's worst excesses rather than simply reject it outright. When the Senate convened, the floor was packed with anticipation. Cameras rolled. Journalists sat poised to capture every word. The American public followed along, divided and curious. Rand Paul rose first, commanding attention. His voice echoed through the chamber. Fellow Americans, I stand here not to oppose progress but to defend responsibility. This bill, while ambitious, risks mortgaging our children's future for short-term gains. He spoke passionately about the dangers of unchecked spending, the importance of safeguarding liberty, and the need to protect vulnerable Americans while ensuring the government lived within its means. His words earned applause from some corners and sharp glares from others. But Rand Paul wasn't done. "I have negotiated with the administration and my colleagues to include provisions that will begin to address some of these concerns. It's not perfect, far from it, but it is a step. For that reason, I will support the big beautiful bill, provided we commit to future reforms that truly curb our debt and prioritize fiscal responsibility." The chamber erupted. Supporters of the bill saw his backing as a crucial win, opponents felt betrayed. Yet, many appreciated his willingness to balance principle with pragmatism. President Trump, watching from the sidelines, smiled broadly. His gamble had paid off. Rand Paul's reluctant endorsement had tipped the scales. The vote was called. One by one, senators cast their ballots. The bill passed by a narrow margin, sending waves through Washington and across the nation, but victory came with consequences. Rand Paul's political capital was spent and the fallout was immediate. In the following days, the senator faced backlash from conservative activists who accused him of selling out. Protesters gathered outside his office, social media campaigns trended against him, and rival politicians seized the moment to question his loyalty. Yet, within the Senate, Paul gained new respect as a dealmaker, a man willing to engage rather than barricade himself behind ideology. Meanwhile, President Trump capitalized on the win, holding a triumphant press conference to declare the bill a historic achievement. He praised the Senate for their unity and touted the legislation as the foundation for America's economic resurgence. But deep beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to show. The bill's massive price tag meant tough decisions were coming. Cuts to Medicaid and SNAP programs sparked fierce opposition from Democrats and advocacy groups, leading to legal challenges and public protests. And Senator Rand Paul, though relieved to have avoided complete political isolation, knew his fight was far from over. He would continue to push for responsible governance, but the experience had taught him a harsh lesson about the cost of challenging the president even when he believed he was right. As the political dust settled, Americans watched closely. Would the big beautiful bill deliver on its promises? Would the nation's debt spiral out of control? And what would become of Senator Rand Paul's place in the shifting landscape of American politics? The story was far from finished, and the echoes of this clash between ambition and principle would reverberate for years to come. The days following the Senate's narrow passage of the big beautiful bill were a whirlwind of media frenzy, public outcry, and intense political recalibration. For Senator Rand Paul, what had started as a stand on principle had quickly morphed into a trial by fire, testing not just his political survival but his personal resolve. On the national stage, reactions were sharply divided. Supporters of the bill hailed it as a triumph for American families, promising jobs, stronger borders, and economic growth. President Trump's media machine went into overdrive, rolling out testimonials from business leaders and border security experts, painting the legislation as the most significant overhaul in years, but critics painted a darker picture. Democratic leaders slammed the bill's steep cuts to Medicaid and SNAP, programs vital to millions of Americans, accusing Republicans of sacrificing the vulnerable to pad tax breaks for the wealthy. Analysts warned the ballooning deficit could cripple the country's financial future. In the midst of this political storm, Rand Paul found himself in the eye of a furious tempest. Conservative grassroots groups that once cheered his maverick spirit now labeled him a traitor. His phone rang constantly with angry calls and blistering emails. Social media lit up with hashtags like #PaulSoldOut and #DebtDanger, rallying opposition, but it wasn't just the public backlash that weighed heavily. Inside the Senate, Paul noticed a chilling shift. Committee assignments he once took pride in were suddenly in jeopardy. Key allies became distant, and whispers about leadership retribution circulated through the corridors. His office received veiled warnings: support the president wholeheartedly next time or face the consequences. His political opponents seized the moment, launching subtle campaigns to undermine his credibility. Even some longtime Republican donors paused their support, wary of investing in a senator who bucked the party line at a critical juncture. Yet, Paul refused to be cowed. In private, he reaffirmed his commitment to fight for fiscal discipline. He ramped up efforts to advocate for future spending reforms, using every opportunity in press interviews and committee meetings to sound the alarm about the growing national debt. Meanwhile, at the White House, President Trump celebrated the legislative victory but privately acknowledged the delicate balancing act ahead. The bill's passage had been a win, but a narrow one, and the president knew that appeasing the party's fractious factions would be essential for future successes. Behind the scenes, aides worked tirelessly to craft messaging that emphasized the bill's benefits while downplaying the controversial cuts. Town halls and public forums became battlegrounds as supporters and opponents clashed over the real-world impact of the legislation. The media spotlight intensified on Rand Paul, painting him alternately as a principled hero or a pragmatic compromiser. Interviews revealed the toll the battle had taken on him: long hours, strained relationships, and moments of doubt. One evening, as Paul sat alone in his Capitol Hill apartment, the weight of the moment settled over him. He reflected on the whirlwind: the confrontation with President Trump, the pressure from leadership, the fiery Senate debate, and the storm of public reaction. Despite the hardships, he knew he had made the right choice. Sometimes leadership meant sacrifice, putting country over party, principle over popularity. At the same time, the senator was keenly aware that the big beautiful bill's real test was just beginning. As the bill's provisions rolled out, its impact on border security, tax policy, and social programs would shape the lives of millions and the political landscape for years to come. As debate shifted toward implementation, the cracks within the Republican Party remained visible. Senators who had once seemed united now faced new challenges from their bases and rivals. The fragile coalition that passed the bill was unlikely to hold together easily. For Rand Paul, the experience was a stark reminder of the costs inherent in standing up to power. Even when that power was embodied by a sitting president with a fervent base, the political chess game was far from over. New battles loomed on spending, debt ceilings, and government oversight. And in the midst of it all, Paul prepared for whatever came next, determined to shape America's future on his own terms, no matter the cost. Months had passed since the dramatic Senate showdown over President Trump's big beautiful bill, yet the reverberations continued to ripple through Washington and across the nation. The battle between Senator Rand Paul and the president had become more than just a political skirmish. It was a defining moment that would shape the trajectory of American conservatism and the nation's fiscal future. For Senator Paul, the aftermath was a mixed legacy. His reluctant support for the bill had averted an outright defeat and preserved his role as a key Republican voice. Yet the price had been high. He had weathered intense criticism from within his party and from the conservative grassroots, who felt betrayed by what some called a capitulation. Still, Paul remained undeterred. His approach had shifted from confrontation to cautious engagement, working within the system to push for future reforms and greater fiscal restraint. His speeches and proposals now carried the gravitas of someone who had faced political fire and emerged more focused on results than rhetoric. The big beautiful bill itself had delivered tangible benefits. Tax cuts provided relief to many Americans. Border security saw increased funding, and certain regulatory reforms stimulated economic growth. Supporters pointed to job creation statistics and a reinvigorated sense of national pride as evidence the bill was working. Yet the bill's massive cost, adding trillions to the national debt, was no illusion. Analysts warned that without serious future reforms, America risked financial instability. Debates over entitlement programs, government spending, and taxation would dominate headlines for years to come. The political landscape had shifted as well. The Republican Party, once united behind the president's vision, found itself grappling with internal divisions between pragmatists willing to compromise and ideological purists demanding fiscal discipline. The clash between Trump's bold agenda and Rand Paul's cautious conservatism embodied this rift. President Trump, meanwhile, continued to leverage his political capital, touting the bill as a cornerstone achievement. His rallies echoed with promises of even bigger, bolder legislation. Yet the cracks revealed during the big beautiful bill debate were reminders that even a president with a loyal base must navigate complex alliances and dissent. The American people watched closely, their opinions shaped by personal experience and partisan narratives. For some, the bill represented hope and progress; for others, caution and concern. In interviews reflecting on the battle, Rand Paul spoke candidly about the lessons learned. Leadership requires courage, he said, but it also requires compromise. Standing on principle is vital, but so is working together to achieve real change. His experience served as a microcosm of the broader challenges facing American democracy, balancing ideals with pragmatism, passion with patience, and unity with healthy dissent. The big beautiful bill would be remembered not just for its policies, but for the political drama it unleashed. The clash between Rand Paul and President Trump was a vivid illustration of the difficult choices leaders face in a polarized era.as America moved forward. The legacy of that fight would inform debates on spending, governance, and the future of conservatism itself. Senator Paul's journey from defiance to reluctant support and beyond underscored the complexity of modern politics. In the end, the story of the Big Beautiful Bill was not just about legislation. It was about leadership, vision, and the enduring struggle to build a stronger, more prosperous nation. And for those who had witnessed the storm firsthand, it was a reminder that in politics, as in life, sometimes the greatest victories come through the toughest battles, and the lessons learned along the way shape the future for generations to come.